Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Matt back with another video. Today I'm reviewing the Viltrox 75mm f1.2, and could you guess it, I'm using it to film this part of the video all the way open at 1.2. That's why the video is so close to my face. I literally can't back my camera up anymore because it's up against the wall. But anyway, let's get on to the physical aspects of this lens, and then we'll talk about the image quality later in the video. So now we're on to the physical aspects of the Viltrox 75mm f1.2. It's actually kind of difficult to fit it into this frame, and it's kind of a large lens, and it's pretty hefty. Not the heaviest thing in the world, but you definitely notice its presence. It has quite a large front filter size there, or just front element, I mean, and even a somewhat large rear element for APS-C. You can see a USB-C contact there for updating firmware, and then there's actually a rubber gasket here because this lens is weather sealed, because as you can see here, it's a Pro lens, Viltrox 75mm 1.2 Pro, proudly stamped right there, right next to this manual focus autofocus switch, which for Fuji, I don't know if we necessarily need that. Maybe that's more just, they just designed that on there, and it's for, because most other camera manufacturers like Sony or Nikon or stuff like that, they have that kind of switch, but usually not Fuji. Nice clicky aperture ring here. Actually, one of the best aperture rings I've tried, besting some Fujifilm lenses, especially. I was just shooting this 23 1.4 Mark I from Fuji. These old Fuji lenses especially have like a really easy to turn aperture ring, but this has just the right amount of resistance, basically. It's just there with like the 33 1.4 XF. It's really nice. And obviously we have this manual focus thing here, which is fine. It has a fine amount of resistance, just like a lot of these mirrorless lenses, though it's focused by wire. I generally don't use manual focus, but I find the manual focus experience fine if you need to use it. It has this plastic lens hood, which is pretty good. It's better than some Fuji lens hoods, to be honest, but it's not quite as nice as the Viltrox lens hood, the metal ones that they had for their 56 1.4, 23 and 33 1.4. So I wish it was that a little bit nicer, but maybe that's a cost-cutting thing because this lens is extremely affordable for what it is, and what it is something that really hasn't existed before. There's never been a 75 1.2, and especially in the Fujifilm system, having such a fast lens at this longer focal length was a gap that Fujifilm hadn't covered, so I think Fuji might actually be scrambling to come up with a competitor for this, because right now Viltrox has 100% market share in the Fuji system for this specific kind of portraiture lens. It has a 77mm front filter thread size, which is quite large because of the large front element letting in that 1.2 aperture of light. But yeah, very nice specimen of a lens, beautiful build quality, rivaling Fuji's and besting some of Fuji's older lenses that feel maybe hollow because they're just generally lightweight. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but this definitely has some heft because, you know, it has some serious glass in it, but just all around the build quality is very exceptional, especially for a third-party manufacturer at a pretty budget price point considering what this is, which is really nice lens. In case you're wondering what it looks like on this X-T3 here, it's quite front heavy, as you can see. It fits better on the XH2S, and even then it's still, you notice it on the front of your camera. I think it's a bit big for the X-T3. Maybe the X-T5 with a slightly bigger grip would work, or even with a third-party grip attached. But without an extra grip on an XT line body, I think it might be a bit uncomfortable in the hand. But just like I said, it's pretty comfortable in the XH2S for me. Just with the standard grip built on. But anyway, let's get on to the image quality, which you might care a little bit more about than me just rambling about the build quality of this thing. So now we're on to the image quality of this beast, which I just gotta click that aperture ring one more time. I'm sorry. The lens is razor sharp, just like every reviewer on the internet has been saying. It's just awesome. It's just awesome. Clinical, maybe some people would consider it clinical, but if you want to capture every single detail in a scene, even weirdly at f1.2, at least what's in focus, this lens can do that, and it's just so awesome. I just can't get over how sharp it is. and how amazing it performs optically, even wide open at f1.2. It just sets a new standard of quality for the Fujifilm system, equaling or maybe even slightly surpassing Fujifilm's newer linear motor lenses, the 33, 23, and 18. There's hardly any color fringing to be seen except for in extreme situations, and as you'd expect with this focal length and aperture combination, the bokeh is just awesome. The biggest bokeh balls you could ever hope for. If your background is really far away from your subject, you will just absolutely lose all detail in the background. But if you have more of a considerate distance, not considerate, but conservative, I guess, I don't know. If your distance isn't as far away, then you can just get nicely out of focus backgrounds. Even this photo of my girlfriend really stood out to me. It's just an everyday moment. I just happen to snap pictures of her all the time. But the depth of field being so shallow, her eye is in focus, and the sparkles on her computer make little bokeh balls, which just looks so cool. It does something that other lenses can't do and makes this everyday shot look a little bit more special, just because the lens can do something that is not what a standard lens does. The focal length is surprisingly useful, especially for me as a professional photographer who makes most of my money taking photos of people. It's extremely easy to make people look good with this lens. It's really easy to pick them out from a crowd and isolate them so they're the only person in focus, especially if you just want to emphasize a person. It's really great in low light, obviously, at f1.2. And I used to have the Viltrox 85mm f1.8, the Mark II version. I did a review on that years ago, probably on this channel. And this lens, the difference between 75mm and 85mm, you think that on a longer focal length, that 10mm difference isn't really going to do much, but this 75mm is significantly more useful and something that's going to stay in my kit. I really wanted to buy this lens, and I ended up getting rid of the 85 1.8 to fund my Fuji 50 to 140. So that's my general zoom telephoto lens if I need that versatility. But if I either am in extremely low light or I have time to compose, or I just want the best optical quality at a telephoto focal length, the Viltrox 75mm is what I'm always reaching for. It's better in every way than the 50 to 140, other than the fact that it can't zoom. The compression that this lens provides is super flattering for people. It's great for taking headshots, and like I said, just taking photos of people in events whenever you don't want to get all up in their business to get a photo of them. Because of the focal length and the aperture put together, it's really great for doing more storytelling kind of photographs where you're stacking compositional elements. Because of the compression, you can have it's easier to stack a foreground, middle ground, and background, and then because of the aperture, you can obviously blur out the foreground and background and really emphasize your subject in a cool way. There is a little bit of flaring at 1.2. It's in the form of this kind of red flare. It kind of looks good in my opinion. It's not as ugly as some other flaring that other lenses have, but in some such situations, even with the lens hood, you might have to shield a flare with your hand, but it's really not that big of a deal, especially compared to what this lens is giving you for results. And finally, this is something I've talked about at least a couple times before on the channel, either talking about f0.95 lenses, mainly talking about f0.95 lenses, but it gives you that medium format look, and not because you're shooting on a medium format sensor, obviously you're shooting on APS-C, but the look comes from the fact that you can isolate a subject focusing at a far distance. Any lens, the closer you focus, obviously blurs out the background, but what makes a lens look like what I'm calling medium format look is the ability to isolate a larger subject at a farther distance, so like a full body shot of a person or an entire car, and still seeing background blur behind that because of the longer focal length, the added compression, and because of the ultra-fast aperture. In conclusion, I really love the lens. It's something that as soon as I saw it announced, I really wanted to have it in my kit because it was right up my alley as a professional photographer that takes photos of people at events or portraits or what have you. It's just amazing for that. I so wish that Viltrox would have sent me this lens, but they actually didn't. I work with my friend Pablo over at Dark Mind Productions. He essentially bought me this lens, and in exchange for it, I used it to make his music video, and I'll continue to use it on future projects with him. So I didn't buy the lens, but Viltrox also didn't send me the lens. My friend bought me it, and then in return, I worked for him. Anyway, I really enjoyed the lens. It's just awesome to me. Let me know what you think of this lens down in the comments below. I would absolutely love to review the Viltrox 27 1.2, but I really hope Viltrox is listening and can send me that, because that is not something I can justify for buying for my kit. So hopefully we can get Viltrox to reach out to me and at least let me borrow their 27 1.2 to do a review on this channel. But because I already own the 33 1.4 and the 23 1.4 Fujifilm lenses, I don't think it makes sense for me to buy that lens. But if Viltrox is willing to send it for me to review, I'd love to test it out on the channel. But that's all I gotta say, guys. It was pretty much an overwhelmingly positive video here, but I gotta say, I mean, testing it out myself, the things that other people were saying about this lens and the initial round of reviews, even though they seemed almost too good to be true, and especially gushy, I can see why. I can see why it's a really great lens, and it will stay in my kit for as long as it lives. So leave a like if you enjoyed, leave a comment down below, start a conversation. Do you have this lens? Do you want this lens? And why? I'll see you in the next video, guys. Peace.